Great, thank you. And yeah, thanks so much, Laura. And thanks to Tim for speaking with us today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tim Chapman, Youth Climate Corps.
Okay, thanks, Sue. This will be a brief presentation today, I think. Definitely open to conversation afterwards. I think that's a great idea. I'm trying a new presentation software called Canva. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully I don't run into too much technical issues. If I do, then I'll just talk at you guys through the screen. But I'll give a go at sharing. And I've got two screens in front of me. So if I'm looking around, it's because I'm looking at notes. So let's wait a second. Let me do this first. Actually, okay. Let's share. And you'll just see a bunch of emails on the screen. And then we'll go here. No, yeah, like that. You guys seeing the title slide? Great. And I got mine, and I can even see folks still. I'm just gonna make you guys even smaller. Tuck you in the corner. Okay. All right, here we go. Hopefully some of you have heard of the Youth Climate Corps program. Yeah, Mel and I kind of co-created this slideshow. She's used it to present to the City of Nelson and other partners. This will be my first time using it. So if there are any hiccups or if I'm pausing a lot, it's just kind of getting the feel of this new presentation. So yeah, thanks again, Sue. I appreciate the opportunity to chat today. And like you said, my name's Tim, coordinator for YCC in Kimberley Cranbrook. I've been with WildSite for 2 years-ish, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And this crew that I'm working on hiring right now, that'll be employed through this summer and fall, it'll be my third team. So very excited. Okay, so the Youth Climate Corps, what are we? Why are we a thing? Why was it developed? I think what I'd like to start with on this slide is talking about how youth face kind of a strange challenge. And I recall this as a young person myself, in that, you know, you need a job to get experience, but oftentimes you need experience to get that first job. And that's really tough sometimes for folks. And so the Youth Climate Corps was created out of a vision to remove the barrier of needing that experience to get a job and do meaningful work and get plugged into a community and, you know, be able to identify what it is that you might be passionate about and what you feel like you should pursue as a career. So really, the YCC, the Youth Climate Corps, is a training and employment program that pays youth to work on projects that contribute to climate adaptation and climate mitigation, and helps to build more resilient communities. We'll say in the Columbia Basin, but right now in Nelson and the West Kootenays and in Kimberley and Cranbrook. We started in 2020 in Nelson as a brainchild of two fellas, John Cathro and Richard Klein. They wanted to find an action-oriented solution for climate change and a way to plug young people into a lot of great work that's going on in a lot of these communities. And in essence, WildSite's Youth Climate Corps exists to connect, inspire, and empower young adults interested in making a difference for the greatest challenge of this generation, which we could say is climate change. So in the 3 years that we've run this program, we started in Nelson and expanded to Kimberley Cranbrook. We've had 42 participants over 5 cohorts. Most of our crew members are BC residents, although last year we did a really good job at attracting individuals from out of province, which is great. Through my interviews so far this season, we've attracted folks from the States as well as from Alberta. So people know that we exist now, and the word is spreading. And that's our strength, is being able to attract and provide opportunities for folks who otherwise may not be able to access, work easily. All the folks that we've brought in have had a variety of experiences and knowledge, many of them having just graduated from some kind of schooling, or they're looking to make a shift in their careers and identify exactly which path it is that they wanted to go down. All of these folks have been motivated to contribute positively to their communities and feel a sense of place, and help to build resilience in a changing climate world. I'm just going to check now that I've gone through a few slides. I'm coming through clearly for everyone, hopefully. Great. So when we develop projects, Melissa and I, or when we're searching out partners and scheming and dreaming about what exactly it is we want to do in any given season, we look for projects that kind of have an intersection between the three points you see on your screen: personal development, skills training, and community benefit. We want to try and highlight jobs or opportunities that give folks a chance to develop themselves personally, whether that's, trying something that's out of their comfort zone, or meeting local professionals, or just like networking generally. Of course, skills training is super important. One of the strengths of the Youth Climate Corps is that in one given season, for example, my team this year will work in approximately 6 different fields on different projects. So that's a really cool chance to decide or get exposure to a lot of different things and develop a breadth of different skills. That's pretty uncommon in an entry-level workplace job, from my experience at least. Usually you kind of have 1 or 2 focuses, and it takes a long time to really branch out and build a breadth of experience. And then community benefit, of course. The strength of our program is rooted in our communities, and the folks that we work with are leaders in our communities who are already doing good work. And so every project that we're involved in, we want to see benefit for the communities in which we live, whether that has to do with food security, wildfire risk reduction. That's just a couple of simple examples. Okay, projects. This is just a snapshot of the broad titles under which we work: food security, ecosystem restoration, wildfire risk reduction. And we're starting to kind of tinker in energy efficiency and retrofitting work. That's primarily, I won't say primarily, that's only been done through our West Kootenay crew so far. So wildfire risk reduction work, we know, super important. Last year, my team carried out a small treatment in the Kimberley Nature Park. It was small, but it's all part of the puzzle in building a more resilient community in terms of its susceptibility to wildfire risk. Crews learn, how to run a chainsaw, how to just have basic forestry skills. They get training like first aid and S100, which is fire suppression training. And it just kind of plugs them into the realities of human impact on the land, and especially the forest ecology, modern forest ecology, I should say, around a lot of our communities, and the divergence that we've seen from traditionally managed, indigenous managed lands and the way things may have been or used to be. We try and weave the history into wildfire risk reduction work as well. So it doesn't just seem like crews are cutting down trees and burning them on the spot, but there's a much bigger context involved in why it is we're doing that work. Ecosystem restoration. This photo is from just north of Sparwood on the Big Ranch property, joint ownership with Nature Trust BC and the Sparwood, what are they called? Rod and Gun Club or Fish and Wildlife Association, something along those lines. My crew last year helped create 5 wetland basins in an area that was, historically kind of wet and had a lot of grasses growing, and it was identified as a great candidate for the building of some wetlands. So the crew was super fortunate to go in there and do a lot of handwork. You can see in the photo, it takes an excavator to build a wetland basin. So pretty cool project crew is involved in. I'm hoping that some of the team from last year have plans to go back out to this site and see what it looks like after a winter and filled up. And I expect that my team this year will get to go and contribute again to this project in terms of doing some more planting and vegetation surveys and monitoring to see how things are going out there. Energy efficiency and retrofitting. So yeah, we live in Kimberley, Cranbrook, Nelson, Rossland, old mining towns, we could say, with houses that aren't not necessarily super well sealed. And one of the simplest things that folks can do to, have a more, I guess you'd say, energy efficient home is to seal your windows, seal your doors. And if you really can, insulate your attic. And so some of the work that we plugged the West Kootenay crew into last year was just identifying homes in the community. We tried to target at-risk populations and folks that were really in need of this work, and do some of these basic things to reduce the cost of an energy bill for families and for associations that were in need. And it's hugely impactful, and there's a ton of work out there in this field, and there's an emerging stream of funding that's becoming more and more available. And then there's also a real need for skilled labor in this field as well. And so plugging young people into this field of work could really lead to fruitful career paths. And it's can be a really impactful way of engaging in the community and making a difference on more of like an individual level for folks. This is something that's pretty important to me, food security. Crew, we have great partnerships with Kimberley Food Recovery Depot and Cranbrook Food Recovery Depot. We do work at the Rotary Garden in Kimberley that our Kim Cran branch runs. We help out with apple capture. We work at the Public Produce Garden in Cranbrook. I really think local food security is something that not only is important for like decision makers to want to increase local capacity to grow food, but I think it's really important to plug young folks in to the skills required to grow their own food, because it can be super easy and really fulfilling and rewarding. And yeah, Kimberley has a short summer, but we also have a really decent growing season where you can generate a lot of food. And in my opinion, both Kimberley and Cranbrook, and I know there are efforts underway in Cranbrook through the Community Connection Society. I hope I got that right. I think Sophie's on this call. She'd correct me if I was wrong. Lots of plans in place, and I think that's great. And so plugging folks in to this type of work is really important, because we've all seen how fragile our food system can be. And one more mention that I'd like to make of a partner we work with Michael Albert and Mary Eve Albert live in Wycliffe and own apple quill farms. They produce lots of food, and they come to the Kimberley and Cranbrook farmers markets and sell great high quality produce. And the crew gets to work with them. Michael is a super intelligent man and a really great farmer and teacher, and the crew working with him last year, they took a lot away from their experience there. So really important topic, food security, close to my heart for sure. I've been watching to see if any garlic has popped up in my beds in my backyard as of yet. No sign, but that's okay. It's still early. Okay, I'm not 100% sure what I want to say about this slide. You know, with all the projects that make up a season for a crew, we look to increase their capacity to take action on climate and become leaders in the community. So we try and explore different leadership styles, whether that's the folks participating learning from myself or from Mel, whether that's learning from industry or community experts, or whether that's giving them the reins and saying, okay, let's identify a project together and you guys go out and organize that. And we try and give as much opportunity as possible for like self-led learning, because I think, you know, in my opinion, micromanaging and hand-holding all the time, it's not a great style of leadership, and it doesn't lead to folks feeling like they can branch out and take on, you know, projects and just dreams of their own after the program. So we really do our as much as we can to highlight various styles of leadership and approaches to empower the folks that are on our teams from season to season. And what are we finding? Through crew surveys, partner surveys, and post-program interviews, we've tried and collect a lot of data. YCC is this interesting thing because there are actually several people studying the program and its outcomes. And I won't even pretend to be able to tell you exactly what it is that these studies are focused on, but I can provide information in the future when these theses are at their completion stage. We're seeing that crew members are interested and motivated in exploring diverse mentorship opportunities and getting experience in a variety of industries. Plenty of crew members, I'd say 30 or 40%, have gone on to work directly with some of our program partners. So that's really great. It seems like on a yearly basis, I get contacted from one of my previous crew members. They're saying to me, hey, this great job opportunity came up with so-and-so because we worked with them last year. I think it's just totally thanks to the Youth Climate Corps. And that's a really fulfilling thing to for me as like kind of the leader, I suppose you would say. Another thing we're finding is that folks that may have a rudimentary understanding of climate change and how things are being affected at a local level are grasping a more deep understanding of what those effects are locally. And it's encouraged these folks to be more connected in their communities. One of the best things about living in Kimberley for me is how tight-knit I find the community to be. People are so friendly, willing to engage, and happy to listen. And that really makes a difference when you're plugging young folks into what could be considered like a vulnerable environment. It's tough to want to put yourself out there. So just a couple of slides here with quotes from folks last year. This one, patience, innovation, leadership, and communication. Just a few things that this individual took away from the season. Again, a better understanding on what's happening in a local level climate work. And then this individual suggested that folks should be prepared for a lot of hard work, because the reality is taking action on climate and doing work on the ground, it's hard work. It can be a lot of work, and it takes dedication, it takes emotional strength, and yeah, crews have really benefited and find it to be very rewarding. And lastly, how are we growing? There's interest from several communities in the basin for us to expand. We're exploring Roslyn. We are 100% going to be launching a crew in Golden in the fall, so that'll be our third location. Fernie sounds like it might be a great fit for us. It's just a matter of finding the right funding streams. So we're growing. There's always interest. If anybody was at Wild Sites AGM 2 weekends ago now, the Youth Climate Corps makes up a large portion of the yearly operating budget for Wild Site. So it's a program that just kind of out of nowhere in 3 years has exploded and has continued to grow. And we're doing our best to make sure that as we grow, we continue to provide well thought out and meaningful programming for folks that are involved. And yeah, that's us. That's Youth Climate Corps.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. It's so nice to see this, and it's really so great to see the work that's underway in community, and to be able to have some, I've had a couple of conversations with people who've been involved with Youth Climate Corps, and it just that, kind of early on, I think it was maybe it was the first year, 2020, and it was kind of an art night with Kimberley Youth Action Network participants. I remember people just, feeling like they were in, being part of Youth Climate Corps. It gave them a way of actually contributing in a meaningful way, and having a place where they could plug in and actually really talk about what's going on, where sometimes that can feel really overwhelming, to walk in a community where you don't necessarily feel like there's anywhere you can plug in and actually have meaningful conversations on climate action and climate more broadly. And so I just really appreciate what you're doing, and I know there's so much that's coming up and how it's expanding. I see Stuart has a question. You want to jump in, Stuart?
I've got lots of questions, but I'll leave some of them to others. So that was great. You used a really good expression there, Sue. Meaningful work. That must be really exciting for these young people. And you're saying something to the effect that most of the funding comes from Wild Site funding?
Oh, we have several sources of funding that we search out through foundations like the Columbia Basin Trusts, private donors. Right. It's quite varied. So
is that, have you got any kind of security in the long, short, or short, long term to ensure that this, you're talking about expanding, which is great. Hopefully the funding will be there. I mean, there are basic things I'm asking myself, like, how do you do transportation for these young people? Where do they stay? I mean, there's lots involved. I mean, it's amazing that you've achieved what you have already. And for them to not only gain experience from experts, I'm assuming, and people like yourself, but also you were saying that it makes them feel a greater part of the community as they get a deeper understanding of climate change. So I've got nothing but plaudits for what you and the rest of the people are doing. Very exciting. So what age, one last question, what age group are we looking at?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't mention that at all, did I? Yeah, 17 to 30 years of age is the government's definition of a youth. And so that opens up other possibilities for funding on our end as well. So we kind of go by the federally defined youth bracket, 17 to 30.
And who determines whether they qualify to participate? Or
we have a formal application process. So we put out job postings and folks submit applications online, and then there's an interview process. So it's like obtaining any job that you normally would. There's definitely a competition involved. and it can be really tough to make decisions on who exactly we want to bring on because we're limited in numbers, of course. But yeah, it's down to myself and Melissa usually make those decisions.
Thanks again. I'll leave it for other people.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, I see Laura Duncan has a question in the chat, and then I'll go to Sharon and then Dre. So Laura Duncan mentions, what are your planned projects in the Kimberley-Cranbrook area this year?
Oh, that's a long list this season. Okay, I'll just rattle off a bunch of things. Wildfire risk reduction work in the Kimberley Nature Park. We'll be working with the food recovery depots again, both in Kimberley and Cranbrook. We'll work with the local Kim Cran Wild Site branch to support their apple capture program and the Rotary Community Garden. We have a stream enhancement project planned in Lois Creek in Kimberley. We have some white bark pine recovery work that we'll be doing with Randy Moody, who's a local biologist out of Kimberley. And we'll probably do some work with Nature Trust British Columbia as well on a couple of their properties, likely down by the Bull River, and hopefully we'll be out in Sparwood again on the big ranch. That's the list for now. It's always growing. Maybe some work with Rocky Mountain Trench Society through Mark Trudeau and Randy Harris. Really, really great fellows to learn from there too. So yeah, huge range of work planned for this season.
That's a great long list. I'll go over to Sharon.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tim, for the presentation. Much appreciated. I have two questions. Number one is Graham and I both attended a presentation given by Naomi and Seth Klein and Anjali Appadurai on a national effort to get Youth Climate Corps initiated all across Canada. Do you know if there's any update since then on that project? And then I have another question.
Yeah, so thanks for mentioning that. And I thought might feed into some of what Stuart was asking about. So that we have an organization called YCC BC. That's how they've been incorporated as a nonprofit. And they're working with partners to expand the vision of Youth Climate Corps across the province and across the country. Since that meeting, Sharon, there have not been any significant updates that I'm aware of, but I believe Seth Klein just published an op-ed suggesting that Canada needs a Youth Climate Corps. And so we'll see what kind of traction that gains and what kind of vision it gets. And you know, their goal, YCC BC, on top of providing some programming, they'll run a crew in Kamloops this year, and then in an Indigenous community on the North Island. And I won't try and pronounce the name of the community because I am not familiar enough. But their goal is to definitely continue to work and lobby and press this into becoming a provincial and national program for young people.
Okay, thanks for that. And secondly, I was just reading again this morning that CBT is withdrawing its funding for environmental education. And does that affect your program?
No, that will not affect our program. We definitely do tap into funding available from the Columbia Basin Trust, but we don't rely on or tap into environmental education, like traditional environmental education funding streams. You could suggest that what we're providing young people is a form of environmental education, but I think primarily that funding is meant for like grade school programs to be delivered. Yeah, so that won't affect us. Yeah,
thanks.
Great, thanks. Just before we go to Dre, and then Wayne Stetsky also gave a wave, I'm just going to mention that's a good prompt for all of us to remember about community engagement with CBT on the 5th of April in Kimberley at on the ski hill there at the conference center. So not just about environmental education, and that's a key one to make sure we bring up, but broadly everything that CBT does, pay attention to all of those to bring forward in that community dialogue. And with that little prompt, I'm going to go over to Dre.
Hello. Yeah, that presentation was great, but I'm turning 16 this summer, so I'm not going to be 17. So is there any other way I can help?
That's a good question. I think at this point in time, with the Youth Climate Corps program, we don't really have avenues identified for volunteer opportunity. I would suggest that if you were interested in being involved, try and be in touch with Andrea, who runs the Kimberley Cranbrook Wild Site branch. She definitely has a need and a want for local volunteers to help out at the farmers market with apple capture, with tons of different programs that the branch runs in Kimberley and Cranbrook. And I think that's a great way to kind of understand what Wild Site does and what we're all about. And then, yeah, keep an eye on what YCC is up to if it's of interest to you, and yeah, give us an application in the future.
What would you do if you were in Nelson? Because yeah, I'm in Nelson, not Cranbrook.
Okay. Oh, that's an even better question. Who's from Nelson in this group? Is Laura from Nelson? She might be able to give you more information than me, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Somebody else speaking? Okay. Yeah, Dre, well, I mean, wouldn't Mel be the one to reach out to first, Tim, just to find out through her, network what because I'm not exactly sure on how the structure is, but I think that I love the idea of having a way that younger, younger than the age that they take for the YCC could be involved in some way as well. So if you are you connected, do you have Mel's contact info, or Tim, maybe you could share that with him? And Dre, I'd be happy to chat with you too. I can put my contact in the chat just if you want to reach out, and I can connect you with some other people in the area as well. So
thank you. That sounds great.
Great, and I can pop Mel's contact into the chat there. And over to you, Wayne.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, for the presentation and for, I guess, continuing to make it happen, because I know a few years ago it looked kind of sketchy in terms of the future for Climate Youth Corps. So great to see that it's still there and expanding. I have perhaps an unfair question, and you can tell me it's not fair. Going back a few years ago, when I was member of parliament, I attended youth-led climate rallies all over the Kootenays. And of course, Greta was front and center at the time, and it was a very exciting time. But what's your sense of where youth are now? Because it seems to have been pretty quiet on the youth front in terms of at least public rallies and things like that over the last couple of years.
That's a tough question for sure. So I can speak to Youth Climate Corps and kind of our stance. We grapple with the question of what our role is in terms of activism semi-regularly. And to this point, we feel like our strength is plugging young people in to the work that's being done and kind of just giving them that outlet to gain skills and then plug them into the community and kind of prop them up in terms of feeling confident in their ability to pursue a career and be passionate about something and make a meaningful on the ground change. The world of climate activism in terms of youth rallies and being noticed publicly in that sense is not a world that we've yet felt like it was where our strength is. And so we've kind of shied away from that. I couldn't tell you from an individual perspective or from past participants how they're feeling about whether or not youth are still getting the voice that they deserve or need on a local or national scale.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah. Okay, I see Laura has a question or comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to, provide a little more context in that energy that was required for, the young people that were sort of running the Fridays for Future group, at least in the Nelson and the West Kootenay area. And as young people do, they get older and they move off oftentimes away. And there's also was a lot of burnout. There was a lot on their shoulders, and COVID hit, and the ability to be out there in public. So I think what's happened with that local movement anyhow is that they've kind of disbanded for a while and are hoping to regroup and re-energize and find young people that are, that can kind of help take that torch. But it is a shame because, like, I know September 2019 in Nelson, there was a huge rally. Wayne, you might have been there. I think they said about 2,000 people showed up in Nelson, and there was so much positive community support. But then, as additional things kind of happened during the COVID era, there were more people out protesting, the vaccine and mask mandates than would show up for Fridays for Future rally. And I think that was feeling really disheartening. So I just wanted to sort of say that anybody that can support young people, I think it's really important, and to show that we are still there and supporting, but the Fridays for Future was a youth-led initiative and was never meant to be like kind of taken over by us telling what to do. And so I think, I just wanted to provide that context as well.
I think if I was to add one more thing on this topic to answer your question, Wayne, the demographic of young folks that we are attracting, and I'll speak to Kimberly Cranbrook more than Nelson or West Kootenay, they feel like the way that they can make a change or make a difference and use their voices by doing the work on the ground. That's who we've attracted to this program. They want an understanding of what's going on and how I can get involved, and like what they can physically do environmentally to make a change. And that's been largely the demographic of youth that we've attracted to the program in Kimberly Cranbrook.
I'm just going to make one comment before going over to you, Stuart. I think it's such a good conversation because, and I hear it from my kids too, who are in their mid-20s, and it's like we just want to do stuff. We don't want to talk about it. We want to do it and make it happen. And yet at the same time, I completely hear that. It's also really important that people who do want to talk about why isn't change happening faster, that they have a safe place to have that conversation, and they don't feel like they're out on a limb, completely by themselves when, it's all this dissonance that's going on, like, why is nothing happening here? And, but that, there are some things happening, and how can we support that moving forward? Like, how can we bring youth in to the things that are happening? And like that community connection, I think, is so important. And, I just hope that, when there are youth out there looking for a conversation, that they can find a good, safe place to have that conversation where it can be meaningful and also, provide some avenues for action if that's what they desire, so that they can feel like they're not just trying to shut it all out, so anyway, I was just a comment. Over to you, Stuart.
Well, actually, it's a question for both you and Tim. I understand that these young people want to do things rather than talk too much, but I also know the importance of spreading the word, especially amongst the public. So Sue, as a councillor, have you thought, maybe this has happened, have you thought of inviting YCC to come and make a presentation to council? And Wayne, would you do the same in Cranbrook? Is that appropriate, Tim? Is that something you think that would be of benefit, maybe to one or two of you young people talk about the projects they're doing?
I think so, absolutely. Quite honestly, I think that this program needs to gain more traction and favor with both councils in Kimberley and Cranbrook. I've made presentations to the council in Kimberley twice, and so they kind of are aware that we exist. But we're exploring this new model of work in Nelson where our crews are doing some of their work on behalf of the city of Nelson. And I think that's a really interesting model to explore. And so they're going to be acting as climate ambassadors to help folks in Nelson understand what exists in terms of infrastructure for people to access grants and other networks that are local to help improve the efficiency of their home, for example. So yeah, I think it's totally appropriate. It's something that we have thought about in the past. Last year, I was hoping the crew would be able to present to council. It didn't work out that way, but anyway, I can pass it off.
Well, hopefully it does, because I remember as a teacher taking my elementary students on more than one occasion at the invitation of council to talk about different things like the local creek or the 3 R's. And they all seemed genuinely interested and applauded the young people, and you hope it has some influence on them and gives them some, and also it gets reported in the press so other people read about it. And I think the more publicity your program can get, the better for the program and for the young people and for their experience. Anyway, good, thank you.
So I'm going to go to Wayne next because I saw Wayne wave his hand, but I'd also like to just respond to the comment about Kimberley Council and yeah, you mentioned I wasn't on council when you presented in the past, and I would of course look forward to and hope that you would put in a request whenever you want, right? And just for information, I have shared the Roslyn retrofit kind of project design and work piece with the city of Kimberley. So I have been in communication with Jessica and Mel over the last couple of weeks, and Jessica just provided a really kind of solid update that for information. So City of Kimberley is seeing that. I'm mentioning these things as we go along. But it would be great to it would be great to have you present to all of council when you're ready, when the timing's right. And over to Wayne.
Yeah, same response really as Sue. Would be happy to support it, but just when you're ready, and make sure that the ask goes to all of council and not just to city administration. So you would address it to the CAO, the mayor, but also all of us on council, so that we can then support it in that fashion.
Well, we're just a few minutes before 1 o'clock. And so if there's any more questions, we probably have time for one or two. And if I don't see any more, then I'm just going to move into a big thank you for taking the time today to everyone. So last call, any comments or questions? Stuart.
Yeah, sorry, it's me again. Do you have, are you finding that you're the people who are the experts out there are actually now more aware of what you're doing and they're actually volunteering there to help? Is your reputation helping that way?
That's a great question. So yeah, this will be the third season we're running in Kimberley, so pretty new. Season 1, we had really one project. Last year we started to explore quite a few partnerships with different organizations like the Rocky Mountain Trench Society, Nature Trust British Columbia, the government. Actually, that's a project I left out. It sounds like the Ministry of Environment office in Cranbrook. It has some work for our crews this year. So yeah, I've been fortunate to be able to tap into Robin Duncan, who's our ED, and all her contacts, and then foster these relationships with different organizations who are now moving into year 2 with that organization in terms of having a relationship. So yes, the answer would be yes. People are, aware that we are out here and are happy to have our crews help them accomplish some of their goals as well. So it's a win-win. Our crew gets experience, other organizations get more work done. You can't really balk at that.
Good, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks, Tim, for the presentation. Really appreciate it, and wishing you the best for this coming season and everything that you have underway.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out.
Okay, thank you.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.